Gladiator is the kind of movie you want to turn to when you need courage, guaranteed to get your blood pumping. It tells the story of a distinguished Roman general, who valiantly fights on the battlefield, swearing to defend his country to the death. But he doesn't desire power. All he wants is to return home after the war and reunite with his wife and child. However, due to the ambitions of others, this Roman general becomes a pawn in the political struggles of the palace. His beautiful home, which he has seen countless times in his dreams, is destroyed, and his loved ones are brutally murdered. He becomes a slave in the gladiator arena. As a slave, Maximus, once a respected general, seeks to redeem himself. In my eyes, this is a movie every man must see. The film begins during the height of the Roman Empire, from the African deserts to the northern borders of England, all under Roman control. 1/3 of the world's population is subject to the whims of the emperor, but Emperor Marcus Aurelius is discontent with the status quo. Accustomed to conquests, he turns his sights to the barbarian tribes of Germania, unaware that the war would last a grueling 12 years. Although Rome suffers heavy losses, victory seems within reach as the Germanic tribes are reduced to their last stronghold. With one final triumph, the Roman Empire can enjoy lasting peace. Facing this pivotal battle, Marcus Aurelius, now in his twilight years, is reluctant to waste any more Roman lives. He sends a messenger to negotiate the surrender of the barbarian tribes of Germania, while everyone awaits the outcome on the battlefield. The protagonist of our story is the renowned General Maximus. Since joining the army, Maximus has risen through the ranks with his formidable swordsmanship and unwavering determination, conquering all in his path. With numerous victories under his belt, Maximus becomes Rome's greatest warrior, the embodiment of every soldier's dream and the guarantor of every civilian's safety. But despite his illustrious military career, Maximus longs only to return to his homeland, to be with his wife and child and live a simple, ordinary life. Every night in the army camp, he dreams of running through wheat fields back home. As he faces the final battle, Maximus steels himself. He must triumph and return home. Suddenly, a flash of light catches his eye, and Maximus sees the decapitated messenger. As the saying goes, when two armies are at war, they don't cut off their envoys, and under these circumstances, conflict becomes inevitable. Watching the barbarian tribe roar wildly on the battlefield, Maximus no longer hesitates. After picking up a handful of yellow soil from the ground and instructing his most formidable lieutenant, Quintus, Maximus swiftly leaves the battlefield on horseback. Everything proceeds according to plan. Maximus first seeks out the cavalry, his elite troops who have achieved countless victories on the battlefield. Behind their impressive record lies the relentless bravery of the cavalry. After a rousing pre-battle speech, the signalman shoots the flaming sword into the sky. Upon seeing Maximus's signal, Quintus immediately orders the attack. Countless flaming swords fly towards the barbarian tribe. Catapults launch at full speed, igniting fires wherever they land. In a flash, the barbarian tribe, disadvantaged in weaponry, suffers heavy casualties, with countless soldiers dropping dead on the spot. But this is just the beginning. Under Quintus's command, rockets rain down on the barbarian tribe's position, and the infantry begins to advance steadily, further squeezing the survival space of the barbarian tribe. At the same time, Maximus's cavalry has entered the battlefield. Employing cunning tactics, Maximus leads the cavalry to flank the barbarian tribe. Just as the barbarian tribe is about to respond to the arrow rain, the cavalry has already penetrated deep into their rear. In the blink of an eye, countless more lives are lost in the barbarian tribe's territory. Seeing the battlefield turning into a close combat zone, the archers and siege engines cease their attacks and gradually move toward the battlefield. The barbarian tribe, surrounded on all sides, is in dire straits. However, close combat is their forte, and they face the cavalry with no fear, unleashing their wild power to the fullest. Countless Roman soldiers fall victim to their ferocity, but ultimately, outnumbered and overwhelmed, Maximus and his cavalry successfully carve out a path of blood, annihilating the barbarian tribe's soldiers. Though many brothers lie dead on the battlefield, victory is at hand, leaving no time for mourning. The survivors cheer with jubilation. Seeing his generals safe, Marcus Aurelius breathes a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, a carriage approaches the battlefield, carrying Marcus Aurelius's son, Commodus, and his daughter, Lucilla, to commemorate the end of the war. Marcus Aurelius specifically summons the two of them. However, the astute Commodus immediately guesses his father's intention. Marcus Aurelius, already advanced in years and weakened by years of conquests, this time, let the two rush to the front line. It is bound to let them listen to the sealed, as the sole heir to the royal family. Even the manner of his coronation has been meticulously planned for years. After arriving at the battlefield, Commodus quickly advances to the front lines on horseback. Meanwhile, within the front lines, Marcus Aurelius dismounts and personally approaches Maximus, praising him incessantly, carefully leading Maximus toward the camp. Marcus Aurelius, seeing the beloved general being favored by the emperor in such a manner, prompts all the soldiers to rise and cheer, creating a magnificent scene. Just as Commodus arrives, witnessing Maximus basking in glory and authority, he seethes with anger but dares not show it. After all, the matter concerns his ascension to the throne. To express condolences, he embraces Maximus. Commodus prepares to assist Marcus Aurelius back to the tent, but Marcus Aurelius refuses. Instead, he mounts his horse and rides back alone, watching Maximus, the object of his father's affection, arranging his attire. Commodus's hatred intensifies. Late into the night, Maximus returns to the infirmary, gazing upon his countless suffering brothers in arms, feeling a mix of emotions. Behind this illustrious general lies a group of comrades who have sacrificed everything. This is the reality of the battlefield, cruel and unforgiving. Fortunately, the flames of war have been extinguished, bringing some semblance of peace to his troubled heart. Due to Marcus Aurelius's summons, Maximus enters the imperial tent. Marcus Aurelius, treating Maximus as a friend, confides in him deeply. After much internal struggle, Marcus Aurelius resolutely passes the throne to Maximus. Having ruled for 25 years, and spent 20 years on military campaigns, Marcus Aurelius is weary of war. Though he may have brought conflict to Rome, he now hopes for Maximus to become the guardian of Rome, to purge the corrupt members of the Senate, and to restore peace and prosperity to the empire. As for the corrupt Prince Commodus, he must never ascend to the throne. Maximus is the only one Marcus Aurelius trusts. However, Maximus, longing to retire and live a quiet life, has no desire to engage in imperial politics, let alone become the emperor of Rome. Seeing Marcus Aurelius's pleading tone, Maximus, unwilling to disappoint him, hastily agrees to consider the offer and quickly leaves the imperial tent. For the first time, Maximus finds himself in a dilemma. He prays fervently before the candles, hoping his father's spirit in heaven will guide him in the right direction. Meanwhile, Prince Commodus enters the imperial tent. During their conversation, Commodus deliberately brings up the matter of succession, clearly indicating his desire for assistance. Marcus Aurelius cannot fail to discern Commodus's intentions and unequivocally states that only Maximus is fit to succeed him. Enraged, Commodus, with no one around, he ruthlessly murders Marcus Aurelius. Despite his desperate struggles, having dealt with everything, Quintus wakes Maximus and rushes him to the imperial tent. Upon learning of Marcus Aurelius's death, Maximus is in disbelief. When Lucilla mentions the royal physician's diagnosis, Maximus accurately concludes that Marcus Aurelius was murdered. In order to let Marcus Aurelius rest in peace, Maximus kisses him as if he were a dear friend. Just as Commodus moves in to accept Maximus's allegiance, Maximus abruptly leaves. Lucilla seems to have also realized the truth and slaps Commodus across the face. After entering the tent, Maximus quickly prepares his gear and orders his subordinates to wake the senators. He insists that there must be an explanation tonight regarding the matter with Marcus Aurelius. However, to his surprise, his trusted aide Quintus has already betrayed him. After calling the guards, Quintus has Maximus arrested on the spot, explicitly stating that he will be executed before dawn. Meanwhile, Commodus sends his men towards Maximus's home, intending to eliminate any potential threats. Maximus finds himself cornered in the mountains, where Quintus specifically orders 4 elite soldiers to execute him. However, Quintus underestimates Maximus's will to survive. Facing this desperate situation, Maximus launches a sudden attack, killing the executioners with their own weapons. With the frost forming on the sword, Maximus manages to seize it successfully. He swiftly strikes down the executioner who tried to flee on horseback. The 4th soldier engages in a life-and-death struggle with Maximus, but the outcome is inevitable. Maximus, with his expertise in combat techniques, manages to kill the soldier, albeit at the cost of taking an arrow himself. Knowing Commodus's character, Maximus realizes that his wife and son are in grave danger. Unable to tend to his wounds, Maximus rushes back home. After traversing rugged terrain, his horse begins to bleed from its joints. Maximus quickly changes mounts and continues his mad dash. However, due to the infection setting in, Maximus, severely wounded, begins to lose consciousness and gradually slips into a coma. On the other side, Commodus's men have reached Maximus's doorstep. Maximus's son believes his father has returned victorious, but his wife notices something amiss. In a frenzy, she rushes toward her son, and Maximus, sensing the danger, is abruptly awakened. He dashes toward his home, but the second horse also collapses under the strain, causing Maximus to fall to the ground. Unwilling to delay any longer, he continues on foot and finally arrives at his old home. However, it is too late. His wife and son are tied to the stakes, about to be burned alive. Maximus cannot believe what he sees. Trembling, he walks up to his wife and kisses her. Then, he proceeds to bury his wife and son. Overwhelmed with grief, he collapses in front of their graves, with his severe injuries festering. Death seems imminent for Maximus. However, to his surprise, a group of merchants passing by rescues the barely conscious Maximus. Juba, also a slave like Maximus, uses ancient methods to treat Maximus's infection, and his condition gradually improves. After a long journey, they arrive at a remote village where, after several transactions, all the slaves on the cart are sold to a wealthy slave owner named Proximo. Proximo is a well-known figure in the town, living comfortably off the earnings from the gladiatorial arena. After purchasing Maximus and the others, he immediately begins their training. Following the ritual, Maximus and the 11 others are given the title Gladiator. To assess their combat skills, Proximo uses wooden swords to simulate fights, using the color on their chests to determine their strength levels. One of the gladiators, a tall and muscular man named Hagen, with an extremely flamboyant personality, receives the first mark, indicating the highest combat proficiency. In red, Juba, who saved Maximus, also demonstrates considerable martial prowess and earns a red mark. After all, he is a hunter by birth, naturally strong and robust. When it was Maximus's turn, he hesitated to participate. After all, he was once a revered general, and the tragic deaths of his wife and son had left him deeply aggrieved. Moreover, his current degraded state made him unwilling to perform for Proximo's entertainment. Proximo noticed Maximus's prideful demeanor and decided to halt the training for the day. At this point, the 12 gladiators were divided into 2 groups, 6 with swords and 6 with shields. Their simple task was to survive in the arena. Before they departed, Proximo sought to stir the latent potential within each of them and maximize the entertainment value. He delivered a striking statement that resonated with Maximus's heart. "You are slaves, too lowly to choose your own lives, but at least you can choose how to die. Will you be mere dirt in the arena? Or will people cheer for you? It's all up to you." With determination, Maximus decided to fight. Even a renowned general could meet his end in a lowly arena, trampled upon by others. Grasping a handful of dirt, he prepared to enter the arena. Inside the arena, adversaries of all kinds awaited. As the gates swung open, everyone rushed into the arena, and the battle erupted. Those paralyzed by fear fell prey to deadly strikes, while those who wielded swords fought for their lives. Hagen, the towering figure, demonstrated his formidable strength, wielding his sword with reckless abandon. Maximus, thunderously striking, pierced through the adversaries with precision and efficiency. Juba also displayed his prowess, cutting down numerous enemies with each swing, complementing Maximus's efforts in eliminating the remaining foes. Witnessing the slaves' overwhelming victory, the spectators in the stands erupted in jubilation. It had been a long time since the slaves had won so decisively. Previous fights had often ended in the slaughter of the slaves. The thunderous roar of the crowd made Maximus feel as though he were back on the battlefield, unable to shake off the feeling for a long time. Meanwhile, Commodus returned to Rome, attempting to assert his authority as the new king. However, his lack of accomplishments stirred widespread discontent among the populace, leading to a chorus of insults directed at him. The next day, inside the Roman Senate, Senator Gracchus reported on the plague, urging Commodus to review the memorandum and promptly address the epidemic. However, Commodus was deeply averse to such formalities and explicitly stated that as long as he used love to influence and embrace the people, the plague would naturally dissipate. This absurd statement drew much dissatisfaction from many, but they dared not voice their anger. Only Gracchus continued to remonstrate, prompting Commodus to prepare to draw his sword. Seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, Lucilla quickly stepped forward and took over the memorandum, helping Commodus out of the situation. In Commodus's chambers, he was infuriated by Gracchus's defiance and contemplated dissolving the Senate and consolidating power under his own rule. Lucilla, unable to voice her dissent, could only remind him that dissolving the Senate, representing the people, so soon after ascending to the throne would undoubtedly provoke public discontent. At this crucial moment for garnering public support, Commodus could only bide his time. In order to gain the so-called popular support, Commodus decided to reopen the gladiatorial arena, which had been abandoned for a full 5 years by Marcus Aurelius, and host a 150-day-long gladiatorial contest, greatly satisfying the people's desire for entertainment. Though the senators were seething with anger, they were helpless, as Commodus's guard was ever watchful, leaving them no choice but to watch helplessly as Commodus wreaked havoc. On the other hand, due to Maximus's outstanding performance, the title of the Spaniard resounded throughout the entire arena. Slave owner Proximo also catered to public opinion and specially arranged a showcase for Maximus as the Spaniard. After entering the arena, Maximus faced 7 swordsmen, each a formidable opponent. He, like a proud trapped beast, harboring deep-seated resentment yet unable to seek revenge, could only entertain the crowd by wielding his sword. He unleashed all his pent-up anger on the masked figures before him, with ruthless efficiency. In less than a minute, all 7 opponents lay dead, their end gruesome. Afterward, Proximo approached Maximus, expressing admiration for his potential and asking if he was interested in fighting in the Roman arena. He saw in Maximus a reflection of himself from years past, a former slave who had become the greatest fighter in the arena after countless battles. Thanks to Emperor Marcus Aurelius's gift of a sword, he eventually gained his freedom, and the arena was subsequently shut down. In this orgy of bloodshed and waste, Marcus Aurelius could no longer bear it, and the gift of the sword symbolized his desire for peace. Proximo then told Maximus about the opening of the gladiatorial arena for 150 days by the new king, Commodus. Maximus instantly sensed an opportunity and expressed his desire to represent Proximo in the Roman arena. Proximo readily agreed and provided Maximus with armor. On the other side, inside the Roman emperor's chambers, Commodus showed great favoritism towards Lucius, hoping to groom him as his heir. Furthermore, Commodus's infatuation with his sister Lucilla was severe, as he had long desired to marry her and produce the purest bloodline for the royal family. However, Lucilla adamantly refused. Faced with Commodus's relentless pressure, Lucilla sought counsel from the Senate. In order to support the operation of the gladiatorial arena, Commodus had already begun selling Rome's grain reserves. Once the reserves were depleted, the people would have no choice but to rely on the arena for sustenance, plunging them into a true era of slavery, and the Republican civilization would gradually fade away. But the Commodus guards are so powerful, and so many counselors have disappeared for no reason, that the people have no choice but to swallow their anger and obey the Commodus. The next day, Proximo and the others arrived in Rome and quickly began preparations after meeting with the person in charge. On the eve of the preparations, the curious Lucius rushed over to see what the famed Spaniard looked like. Through their conversation, Maximus discovered Lucius's identity as Lucilla's son and quickly hid himself, to avoid being recognized. Maximus deliberately wore a mask before heading to the arena. As the gates opened, several chariots rushed out from behind, with steel spears mounted on the hubs, shooting wildly on the periphery, causing heavy casualties among Maximus's group. Seeing this, Maximus shouted loudly, rallying everyone to quickly form defensive formations. They successfully used shield walls and spears to bring down the chariots, then surged forward to kill their opponents. Seizing a horse, Maximus took command while bravely fighting off enemies, ultimately annihilating the opposing forces. The 50,000 spectators inside the arena erupted in excitement. Commodus, recognizing the extraordinary talent of the white horse Gladiator, decided to recruit him for his own use. After making arrangements, he quickly left the stands. Meanwhile, Maximus, who was about to be ambushed by spear-wielding attackers, was forced to abandon his assassination attempt. When Commodus arrived at the arena, Maximus calmly picked up a broken sword, intending to send Commodus to his death in the arena. However, Lucius also followed, standing firmly in front of Commodus. Unable to carry out the assassination with so many witnesses present, Maximus reluctantly gave up. But Commodus was displeased with Maximus's attitude and demanded that he remove his helmet. Maximus complied, revealing his true identity. Commodus was shocked, and his guards quickly moved in, preparing to attack Maximus. However, in front of the watching crowd, Commodus couldn't act against a victorious gladiator without causing an uproar, so he reluctantly raised his hand. Learning of the general's return, the crowd was ecstatic, and cheers reverberated throughout the arena, greatly moving Lucilla. Enraged by being deceived by his subordinates and seeing Maximus, a former slave, winning the hearts of the people, Commodus decisively smashed Marcus Aurelius's statue into pieces. Early the next morning, Commodus had Quintus's confidant tied to the execution post, hoping to get an explanation from Maximus. However, Quintus was completely unaware and could only watch helplessly as his confidant was stabbed to death. At noon, Commodus deliberately summoned Tigrus, the undefeated general of Roman gladiatorial history, to ensure Maximus's execution and prevent anyone from disrupting his control. Tigrus, wielding 2 axes with blades on his back, initially had the upper hand against Maximus, but then, under Commodus's arrangement, 3 tigers were released, further reducing Maximus's survival space, creating a dire situation. Undaunted by the danger, Maximus seized the opportunity when the tigers were distracted by food and swiftly killed one with a sword thrust. Taking advantage of Tigrus's attack, Maximus deflected his weapon with a shield and then struck him down with a brutal blow from the axe, leaving Tigrus immobilized. As victory seemed imminent, the crowd erupted in cheers once again, but Maximus, unwilling to be a mere spectacle for the masses, remained true to his nature and laid down his weapons, igniting the crowd's admiration once more. Enraged, Commodus led his guards to surround Maximus, hurling vicious insults about Maximus's deceased wife and child. trying to provoke him into action, even ordering his execution. But Maximus, seeing through Commodus's intentions, restrained his seething anger and bowed before leaving the arena. On his way back, Maximus was approached by Cicero, his former close guard, who handed him a package and informed him of the Mon family army stationed outside the city. Upon opening the package in his cave, Maximus discovered clay figures he had prayed for his wife and child during his military days. With Cicero's assistance, Maximus arranged a secret meeting with Lucilla that same night. Commodus's sale of grain and the gladiatorial games were pushing society closer to total dependence, leaving little time for action. With Maximus gaining popular support, the three decided to send him out of the city. Once he reached the Mon family army, Maximus could regain control of the military, and Commodus's guard within the city would be insufficient to stop him. After arranging for Maximus's departure from the city, the three quickly withdrew. However, Commodus grew bolder and openly harassed Lucilla. She sought out Maximus, and they decided to act ahead of schedule. But Commodus discovered the plan through Lucius and forced Lucilla to reveal everything. That night, Commodus's guards suddenly attacked Proximo's camp. Hagen, accompanying Maximus, was shot dead by arrows to cover Maximus's escape. Proximo was also killed by the guards for his involvement in the rebellion. As Maximus attempted to leave the city, he encountered Cicero, only to realize it was a trap. Cicero had been compromised, and countless archers were lying in wait. The next day, Senator Gracchus was also arrested. Commodus continued to ravage Lucilla, declaring that all who resisted would die, and then finding Maximus and sinking a poison arrow deep into his ribcage. The final showdown began. Despite the poison weakening his body, Maximus fought valiantly, knowing his end was near but determined to take Commodus down with him and give Rome an era of peace. With all his remaining strength, Maximus fought Commodus, using a moment of vulnerability to lure him to the edge. Seeing no way out, Maximus unleashed his fury, striking down Commodus's sword and injuring his arm. Desperate, Commodus demanded a weapon from Quintus. But Quintus, moved by Maximus's selfless sacrifice and appalled by Commodus's tyranny, ordered the guards to stand down, leaving Commodus isolated. As Maximus's consciousness faded, he issued Marcus Aurelius's decree, instructing Quintus to release Maximus's innocent former comrades and Gracchus, ushering in a republican era for Rome. Maximus is down for good, officially reunited with his wife and son. Lucilla wept tears of grief for Maximus and honored him with the highest rites, laying him to rest. Juba, now freed, buried the clay figures Maximus had prayed for his family at the gladiatorial arena, where the hero's journey ended and began anew. And thus, the movie concludes a truly epic masterpiece. As movie enthusiast, I appreciate your attention, and until next time.